Welcome back to another Python tutorial video where we are exploring the TD Ameritrade Python API library. So previous videos, we were kind of focusing on orders. We still have a couple more components to orders that we need to cover. However, I do want to start talking about the streaming functionality because I think I can get it pretty much all done within a single video. But for most people, I think who have probably used the library at this point, they are aware that there is streaming capability that comes along with it. And so this is basically creating a connection to a WebSocket that you can then use to stream different types of data into Python. And then ideally, what we will have is writing functionality to write that data to, whether that be a CSV file or a database or something along that nature. Now, here is the thing when it comes to the writing functionality. There is writing functionality in there. However, it's very strict in the regard of, I will write it for you, but I will only at this point write it to a CSV file. Now, down the road, there will probably be more integration where, obviously we provide more services like maybe a database connection, maybe a text file, maybe even something like an Excel file or whatever it might be. But right now, I just wanted to get some type of writing functionality out there. I know it's not ideal in every situation. However, it is something that if down the road you want to then take that data and put it into a database or something along that nature, at least you do have that capability. So still early stages with that, but there is writing functionality. Additionally, the streaming component of the library is still very much a work in progress because there were certain endpoints I was able to get working, however, they are not documented. And so sometimes they do cause issues, and it simply is a situation where I have to kind of explore, see what happens, and see how that impacts the library. So I will not promise at this point that it's static. I will say it is probably going to change, considering what we find to be is the most stable way of making these streams and just the way that's going to work across, obviously, the broader audience. So that's kind of my disclosure in the beginning is do not be surprised if maybe what you're seeing in this video right now is slightly different or in some cases very different compared to what you might find on the library. If it probably does change very dramatically, I would dedicate a video to kind of walking through what has changed. Okay, so with that being said, let's get started. And as we go along, we will go through all the wonderful little steps that can sometimes throw you off. So at this point, hopefully this code right here looks familiar. Right now, I have made some changes to the library. I mentioned that in the order one. So I have simplified the initialization of the client, the standard client, to where I am only asking for your client ID, redirect URI, and this new argument called credentials path. It is currently not uploaded to PyPy, and so I will be doing that before I release this particular video today. So that way you have the latest version of the library. So I would recommend that you upgrade your library before you run this script because there have been definitely a lot of changes trying to simplify it. And then probably the biggest thing too is improve doc strings, stuff along that nature. So at this point, you should kind of understand this is just initializing the client. That login call, so basically the login method, creates a new session with the TD API. So this is where you will become authenticated, and you will now have an authenticated session where you can start making requests. Now, let's say you want to then start streaming. Well, how do you start streaming? Well, what you're going to do is you're going to create a streaming client. Now, that's actually very easy to do. What you're going to do is you're going to first create a new variable and just call it TD stream client. That will equal the standard client, and there is a method in there called create streaming session. This particular method will initialize the streaming client, and it will return that object back to you. So you can kind of see right here, it will return a TD streamer client. So this client now has new methods and properties about it in order to create a streaming session and subscribe to certain services. So part of it is defining the services you want. And then there's another component, which is as data comes in, do you want to write it somewhere? Now, like I said before, right now it's only going to write to a CSV file, but you can kind of control how that write looks like, or more specifically, you can modify certain behavior when the write is happening. So if you do want to integrate write behavior, it's very simple. So you would just say, well, I'll put a little comment here, specify the write behavior of the stream. And so here I would call my TD stream client. And then here you're going to see a method called write behavior. Write behavior has some default arguments and then a one that you need to specify. So at a minimum, you have to give me file path. So the file path is basically the location where you want this CSV file to be created. So if you want it just in the local directory, you just give me the file name with the .csv extension at the end of it. Now, write by default is CSV. You don't need to change that one at this point, but as I start moving to different, file types, then that will change slightly. The final argument is append mode. So especially if I'm writing to a CSV file, I have the capability to say, hey, if that file exists, then just add to that existing file. So if you specify append mode to be true, what you're telling me is, hey, write to that file. If it already exists, just add new rows at the bottom. If you specify it to false, then what will happen is it will overwrite that file. So we'll basically delete it, creates a new one, and then it's going to start writing again. So if you want it to write to an existing file, append mode needs to be true. So in essence, this is what it would look like if you want it to be very specific and specify kind of every field of that particular method call. So in this case, my file path would be, I don't know, call it stream data.csv. And then I would specify my append mode to be true. Now, again, you don't really need to specify this one at this point. And then this one by default is true. So this is kind of unnecessary. I would only specify that one if it would be false. Okay, so now that you've specified the write behavior, you will notice over here when we run it, 2 CSV files will be created. One will be for basically the level 1 and chart data, and then the next ones will be for the level 2 data. So let's start subscribing to some services. Probably the easiest one you can subscribe to is level 1 quotes. This is very straightforward. It's nothing too complicated, and it works very reliably. So we will say TD stream client, and then you will notice there are multiple services you can subscribe to. Some are level 1 data. So, things like quotes, things like, if you want to see open, high, low, and close. And then we have level 2 data, which is book data. So you can see the bid and the ask and the actual size of those particular orders. And so if I want level 1 quotes, then I would specify level 1 quotes. Normally, every service is going to more than likely require 2 arguments, symbols and fields. Here's what I'll tell you about fields. They can cause issues if you don't know what can happen. Normally, what you would do is you would do symbols, right? So you say, okay, I want like quotes for Microsoft, and then I want quotes for Apple. And then what the fields do, at least from the API perspective, is they allow you to specify what fields you want back from that stream, because each stream can have multiple fields that are returned back to you. And so if you actually look at it, it's kind of interesting, because you will notice when you go to the Streaming Data API and you look at some of their services. So let's say I want to look at level 1 quotes. Okay. So if I wanted to make a request, normally you could specify each one of these fields, right? And if I want just fields 8, 9, 10, and 11, I would just make a request where I say I want fields 8, 9, 10, and 11. And normally you would expect there wouldn't be a huge issue with that. Well, there can be an issue with that. So what I have seen, and I can't 100% say this is the cause of it, but if you subscribe to a service, you have to make sure your fields are in sequential numerical order. And sometimes that doesn't even do it. Sometimes you have to literally provide from start to finish each field. So even though you might want fields 5, 6, 7, and 8, if you were to negate, say, fields 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, you would get an error. And so I have seriously debated, I might just get rid of fields altogether. And basically, if you subscribe to a service, you will be getting every field back. If I don't decide to do that, then more than likely what's going to have to happen, unless I can find some kind of logic as to why it won't work, and sometimes it will work when it comes to fields, is if you want fields 5, 6, 7, and 8, then behind the scenes, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to also be grabbing fields 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So even though you don't want those ones, I have to maybe provide it, because in order to make sure you get your data back, I'm going to have to offer that. So normally what I've told people is right now, I just create a list object and then I wrap that with a range function. So I put a range function in it and I start the fields from 0 to whatever the one I want. Now, quotes, for example, goes up to like 52, I think, or something like that. Yeah, 52. I'm not going to get all 52, but I will get fields 0 through 38. And so when I do that, that seems to work fine. Obviously, if you want all of them, it would just be 0 to, 52, 53, whatever, which one you want. So don't be surprised with this one if I just one day decide to remove it. More than likely, that is just to enhance the actual stability of the program, or what I'm going to be doing is by default, I might be having this set to something like all. So basically, you would just pass through all, and then it would return everything. So this is how it looks when you subscribe to a service. You define the symbols and you define the fields you want. So right now, I'm streaming to level 1 quotes. If I then want to then start streaming, it's very straightforward. So start streaming. All you would do is you would call your stream client, and then you would see a stream method. Now, what I have added is an argument. It's optional. You don't have to specify it. If you, for example, you do not want to print the data to your console, then you would set the print argument to false. And so what that will do is the data will stream, but you will see nothing on your terminal. Sometimes that can be beneficial because oftentimes you get a bunch of data back. And then ideally down the road, there will be more functionality added to it where maybe you could provide your own custom function that would do different types of operations on the data as it's coming in. So it is there. Most people, though, are going to want to see the data as it comes in. So if you just want to leave it as is and sees the data, then just don't do anything. Just call stream, and then you'll start seeing it as it comes in. So right now, I have enough to actually start a stream, and I will be seeing new CSV files being created on the left-hand side. So if I run this, hopefully it doesn't break, but you can start seeing that information is coming in. The speed and the frequency at which this data comes in will normally be dictated by 2 factors. One is if you make a quality of service request, you can specify the frequency in which the data comes in. However, I will explain in a second, there's a caveat to that. However, with the quality of service request, you will see, oh, that's just something like that. That's just me checking something. Where did I put it? Testing, here it is. You will see there is a quality service request. And so Express is like the fastest one. There's real-time, fast, moderate, slow, and delayed. So with those ones, obviously, if you want it really fast, you would do Express. If you want it real-time, you would do real-time, so on and so on. Now, here's the other big catch to that. Sometimes it won't come back any faster even if you specify that. So in some cases, if the data doesn't actually update, then you don't get anything coming back to you. So just say you were streaming quotes from a particular entity or a particular instrument that just was not heavily traded, and it very, very rarely changes price. In that situation, you would not actually see data coming in outrageously fast. Additionally, during the period which you're streaming, so if you're streaming during market hours, you're obviously going to see things coming in a lot faster. If it's after market hours, in some cases, you might get only one call and that's it. They're not going to send you anything else back. So if I was to call get quotes, say in post market, then I would get one call and I wouldn't get anything back after that point. So keep in mind the frequency at which you'll see this data will change depending on the quality of service that you've set, and then additionally, how frequently the data is changing and if you're streaming during certain market hours. So right now you can also see it created the 2 CSV files, and in one CSV file right now, you can see all the data coming in. So all I do is I just say service, timestamp, I think that's like the subscribing or something like that. I gave you the original field key, what the heck does that actually mean? So like field 29, what is that? So field 29 represents net change, and then I gave you the value for it. So you should always get back 6 columns where you have the service, the timestamp, and so on and so on. So right now you're getting everything, but it's at least in a normalized fashion where if you want, you could actually filter it or whatever you want. So that is basically streaming in that regard. So let's look at some other services, because that's just one service, right? Well, there's other ones too. So for example, I have level 1 Forex. This one's kind of nice too. And don't be surprised if I jump back between scripts, because sometimes I don't remember what exactly I put down. Yeah, okay, here it is. So this is level 1 Forex. Normally with this one, it's going to be a currency pair. So you can see right here, this is the Euro USD. Again, I'm just passing through fields, nothing crazy. Additionally, I will cover and just kind of copy some of these guys right here, and we'll start kind of talking through, how they're varying depending on the service that you are looking at. So for level 1, here are your options that you can stream. You have quotes, you have Forex, you have options, you have futures, and then you have futures options. This one should be pretty straightforward. It's just the symbol. The Forex, again, in this situation, you want to make sure you have your pairs. Options are a little bit more challenging, just because there's obviously many different options out there. They represent different things, whether they're a call, a put, they can be different price, and they can expire at different times. Normally, this is how the symbol needs to be specified. First, you define the symbol. So in this situation, I want option contracts for Apple. Then it's an underscore. If you go into Thinkorswim, this is how it will look. You cannot pass that one through. You have to have an underscore between the symbol, and then we'll just call it the contract code. So symbol, underscore, this represents the month, this represents the day, and then this represents the year. So that is basically the expiration date. And then you have either C or P. So C represents call, and then P equals put. And then the price. If it's a price that is fractional, then it's a period and then the fractional component. So in this case, it'd be 115.50. Fields are still the same, so you can adjust that however you want. The important thing is you just have your contract code. Again, you can have multiple, so you can have multiple contracts that you stream. That's options. Let's move on to futures. Futures are easier than options. All you're going to do is it's the future symbols, and then it's going to be a /. So /, then the symbol. This represents futures. So in this case, I'm doing the S&P 500 mini, and then I'm doing oil, which funny enough, hopefully we were all looking yesterday at oil where, what was it, negative contracts? My goodness, whatever thought that would happen. Very interesting time we are in. Sorry, I had to take a little water break. Okay, so that's futures. Let's move on to futures options. Futures options is kind of the same. There are different ways you can do it. I don't know why I have this one in here. I'll see why. Maybe I have it in there for a reason. I've been testing a lot, so I don't know sometimes. In this case, if I want to do a futures option, it's going to be a period, the /, and then it's going to be the contract code. Personally, when I get the contract code, what I've been doing is I've just been using Thinkorswim and then looking at the options chain and for futures, and then that basically gives me everything I need. I think I've tried M20, if I remember correct. I can't remember if that was the one. I think that one works. I'll try in a second, but that would be level 1 futures options. So right now you're getting a lot of good data here. Let's kind of see what that data starts looking like as it's streaming in, barring it doesn't break on me. Okay. And so you can see level 1 futures. Some, of course, are going to be updating more frequently than others. It really just depends. Again, if some are trading more frequently than other ones, then you will see more data coming in. But now you can see level 1 futures options, level 1 futures, level 1 Forex options, quotes. So, you know, it really depends. I mean, you can see here we haven't really had much level 1 futures options updating, but you know, there could be many different reasons for that. So you'll kind of just have to play around a little bit to kind of see what's going on and what is causing ones to maybe update more. But ideally, you should be seeing, you know, the data flowing in as it's coming. So really just depends what you are playing around with. You can see Forex. So very useful, obviously, if you want some of this data. It's very nice that we even have access to it. I will say this is probably the one that causes the most trouble, just because it, you know, it's one of those things. It wasn't really well documented, and I don't really know if it truly works. I think maybe I just found a way to make it work. And if that's the case, then that potentially could cause a reason as to why that is happening. So it's hard. It's hard to say why some will work and some won't work. I'm kind of just guessing right now in the sense of what might be causing that. So let me try this one again, CLM 20. Part of me too says it might be something related to the active contract. I feel like that's happened sometimes where I'm like, I don't know about that. It just seems to work better with the active contracts versus the non-active contracts, at least from my experience. Now I have to like go in here and see if I can find level 1 futures options again. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna close this out and then I'm going to delete that and run it again just so I can see it. It's easier sometimes to just start from scratch. So yeah, that's the contract one there. That's the one there. Level 1 futures. Yeah, so it's there if you want to try it. So that's level 1 data. We also do have charting capability, so you can do chart streams. I will tell you, it depends what you're trying to do. That will impact what's going to happen. And then we'll also talk about time sales data. So here, I'll just have this one and talk more through it. And then just give you some warnings about which ones I have gotten to work and which ones I haven't gotten to work. So right here, I'll comment this out and then uncomment these ones. This one I can guarantee you at some point, I'm going to just get rid of that. I mean, if you're streaming chart data, more than likely you're going to want every field back. So you can stream level 1 chart for equities and level 1 chart for futures. Again, the actual, what is it, symbology? Is that what they were saying in the API documentation? Is exactly the same. So obviously, if you're going to be doing level 1 quotes, it's just going to be the actual symbol itself, and then it's going to be, again, if you want multiple ones, just separated by comma. In this situation, you just need to put in fields 0 through 7. And then the only big thing about chart is it does ask for a service. So kind of what I did is I bundled all the services into one. And so now you can do chart equity, chart futures. There is a chart options one. I've never gotten that one to work. I don't know why. I don't know if it's a symbology thing where I just can't, it doesn't like what I put in there. Or if it's something like that service just doesn't exist, but the documentation is there. There have been situations like that in the past. So it's hard to say what exactly would be the reason for why that one doesn't stream. But I will show you, I mean, it will successfully subscribe to it, but the data just doesn't seem to come in for whatever reason. So this is streaming chart data. The thing about the chart data that you need to understand is it doesn't update nearly as frequently as the level 1 data. So these ones are designed if you need data that flows in as you're kind of seeing the chart change on Thinkorswim, for example. So you will not actually see a physical price change until for at least 1 minute. So each price change will actually come in at a minute rate, at least close to that from what I've seen. So ideally, what you would be doing with this service is if you were kind of doing like a trading robot or something like that, you would subscribe to this service because you would only get data coming in as you basically have the next closing bar, which you can then use to calculate indicators or whatever you want it to be in that particular situation. So in a nutshell, that's charting. However, there is one specific thing about charting related to futures. So they will give you historical futures data. For this one, it's going to be the chart history futures endpoints or service if you want to do it. And this one's a little bit more complicated. From what I've found, I think it's better to do a custom range. It's weird. If I specify a frequency or period, it will work, but sometimes it just gives me one piece of data, which is odd. And I don't really know why that necessarily is the case. It could be something that maybe the price just doesn't change that much or whatever, but I have found that I get more data back depending on whether I do a standard period or if I do a custom range. So normally what it would look like is you're going to still specify your symbol. So in this case, it's still going to be, ES or whatever it is. And then you're going to specify frequency. So frequency is defining, if I have a range, how narrowly do I need to slice that range? That's your frequency. So I can have 4 weeks, right? But how narrowly do I need to slice that 4-week range? So your options are the following. If it has an M in front of it, it represents minute. So you can do 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and 30 minutes. If it has an H in front of it, it's hour. You can do 1 hour. You can do 1 day. So if it has a D in front of it, it's day. If you do week, you can do 1 week. So W represents a week, and then N represents month. And so in this case, there's N1, which represents 1 month. So I'm slicing my yearly data maybe into 1 month. If you did specify period is defining how big is your time frame? How long are you talking about? Well, you have 5 day, you have 4 weeks, you have 10 months, 1 year, and 10 years. I've never personally done 10 years, so I don't know if that one actually works, but it's there. I think it worked. No, I don't know if I tested it or not. But those are your options. I have tried with like 1 day, for example, and it works sometimes. So you could try it. I'm not going to say it's going to necessarily work all the time and with every type of symbol you put in there, but you could try it and see what happens. Now, if you want to do what I think would probably be the more stable approach, you would just do a custom time range. So you would forget about period altogether. You would specify your frequency. So if I want minute level data, then I'm going to give myself a start time and then a end time. So end time is your later point in date. So that's like, say, for example, today. Your start time is when you are going to start collecting data. So from January 1st to April 4th, right? Something like that. So your start time is back in time. Your end time is your ending point in time. So maybe it's your finish line. So that would be streaming chart history futures. This will write to the CSV file. And then same with these ones as well. These ones, though, are not going to update as frequently. This will only be called once, and that's it. So calls once, you got your data, great, you're getting out. So that's charting. So let's see what that one looks like. You can see, obviously, there is a ton of data coming in for the chart history. It's because I did a very large time frame. And then here, you can see lots of data. And you can see the chart equity just updated. So that's kind of neat. And this is me trying to find the top of my chart, or I can just go down to the bottom and make my life easier. Close it. load it. Maybe I didn't put it in there. I can't remember. No, it's there. Yeah, here it is. Chart futures, chart equity. So it's streaming in, but that's charting. So you do have the capability to stream data as it comes in. Be very careful. Check your timestamps. Make sure the data is actually changing. All right. So that's level 1 charting. That's all you get for charting. There is time sale data as well. Right now, I have equity, but there are other options if you'd like. There is time sale futures. And I'll just do CL and ES. And then I think there's an option one. You would think, being the person who wrote this, that I would remember which ones I have, and sadly that's not the case sometimes. Yeah, and there's Forex too. Oh. No, Forex isn't available. I think that's the one that returns an error. So see, when you see things like this, that should give you a warning. Don't be surprised if it doesn't work, because it probably doesn't work. That's been probably the biggest challenge of working with this API is you don't know what works and what doesn't work. And then if it doesn't work, you kind of are on your own in the sense of where do you look and how do you, get the data as it comes in. It's kind of just one of those things. I'll put options in here as well. I don't remember if I have write functionality for this one. I will check. And then I'll try to have it up before I release the video, but no guarantees. So this is level 1 time sales for options. Ooh, this is the interesting one. I'll put Forex on there. Let's run it right now, and then we'll see what happens when we put Forex in there. Because I think for the most part, it's probably not going to work if I remember correctly. I can't remember, to be honest, if options works correctly. Yeah, so you can see this one's definitely coming in more frequently than the other ones. Oh, I did have it written. Oh, nice. I surprised myself. I actually had it written this time. It does not look like options works. So that doesn't surprise me because I know one of them wasn't working. And by all means, play around with it. It might be something, again, where the symbology has to change. Unfortunately, you kind of just have to look and guess a little bit. So you can see right here, like there's obviously futures, there's obviously equity. Yeah, I don't know. They say see symbology table, but that doesn't give too much clarity sometimes. So that's time sales data. I'm not going to do Forex because I think it's just probably not going to work. So, but with Forex, I mean, what you basically would do is you would still do the EUR USD, and then this one would be Forex. Because it has to just match what you see here, right? If you wanted to do it, but I'm not going to promise it's going to work. All right, so there's that one. Let's move on to level 2 data. So this was one I was very proud I was able to get working because, again, no documentation. I have to guess. For level 2 data, you have level 2 quotes. And so in this case, if I want to do like I've done anything in the past, it's going to be just your symbols. And then with level 2 quotes, you have this. Here's the thing about level 2 quotes. All this is defined as book. So they just say book. There is a Nasdaq specific one. So there is a Nasdaq specific level 2 service. So my guess would be, if I just had to, guess off the top of my head, that would be for symbols that trade on the Nasdaq exchange. So normally what I do here is I just put like, IBM. So I know IBM's not on, at least I don't think IBM's on Nasdaq. And then on these ones, I try to do Nasdaq specific entities. Again, I don't know if these ones are actually on it, but yeah, it's interesting, to be honest. I haven't really gone too much into depth with this one just because I was like, okay, great, it works. So this one you'll see book, this one you'll see level 2 Nasdaq. So those are that ones. You also have level 2 for options. So you have TD stream client, and then it's going to be level 2 options. And then with this one, you obviously want your field to be the symbol. And then in this case, it's still going to be 0, it's still going to be 1, and it's still going to be 2. And then there's some other ones. I'll talk about them. I don't think I've actually ever gotten them to work. So level 2 futures, it's there. It doesn't, I don't think that one works. I think this one, you'll see in a sec. Yeah, that one doesn't work because it comes back with the service doesn't exist, or it's not enabled, or something like that. And the same thing with level 2 Forex. It will come back and it will subscribe, but then it will say something like, oh, that service doesn't exist. So I have placeholders here if people really want to try and see if they can get it to work. However, right now, it just doesn't seem to exist. Not surprising because there's no documentation on it. So to be completely honest, the fact that any of these are working, I was pretty surprised to begin with. But some work, most of them don't though. There's also an Opera one that's there. Never got that one to work. And then NYSC, there's that one there. That one's a little bit weird in the sense of it will actually subscribe and then there will actually be data coming back, but it's not proper JSON. It's like cut off, like 10 characters in. So that one's a really weird one where it will actually send data back to you, but it's not correct. It's like this weird garbage of information and characters. So it's there. Again, if you want to experiment and try to get it to work, by all means, go out there and try it out. And then there's also level 2 total view. So with this one, you just want to put in the symbols, and then I don't know why I had these as strings. It's probably because I was still testing it, if I had to guess. But we'll fix that right now if it's not already fixed. Time sale, time sale. Level 2 quotes, level 2 options, level 2 Nasdaq, futures, total view. Here we go. Okay. Okay. Okay, I'll leave it right there for right now because I don't know if that's actually wrong or not. We'll see in a second. If it comes back with an error, we know it's wrong. So let's see level 2. Keep in mind that data will go here. I'm not positive I have the right functionality for level 2 total view. Okay, yeah, so I was right. Just leave it how it is, Alex. Stop trying to change things. You had it there for a reason. Okay. So this is the one I was talking about with the futures book. You can see here it comes back. And then, of course, what it did was it totally just closed the connection, which isn't surprising. So we'll turn that off for a second, and then I will write it again. Perfect. So that one worked a lot better that time. Level 2 comes in very fast. Very, 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 very fast. You can see in here, there is a service for total view. Total view is a little bit different. So I know for a fact I don't have that one with write capability because you can see I have to then parse it and I have to work on that one a little bit more. So Nasdaq book, and then where is it? Nasdaq book, and then you can see in here, Nasdaq book, listed book. That's the other one, listed book, options book. So that one worked, which is awesome. But there's obviously no total view at this point. That one's still a work in progress. Same with active view for level 1. But in a nutshell, that is the streaming client. So that's pretty much all the functionality at this point that you can leverage. Again, just to reiterate, it is still a work in progress, so do not be surprised if this changes over time. That is simply to make it easier to work with, and then ideally giving you more flexibility when it comes to working with the API and using it in the way you want to be using it. So at this point, you got any questions, by all means, put them down in the comments below, and I will try to help you through it if I can. Keep in mind, especially with these endpoints, there's no documentation, so my guess will be try it out, see what happens. If it works, great. Let me know. If it doesn't, keep trying. Or you might not ever get it to work. That's just the reality of the streaming API. So again, if you have any questions, by all means, ask away. Next video, we will talk about, what are we going to talk about? Advanced orders. So we're going to talk about advanced orders. So those are the trigger and the conditional orders. So we will see you in the next video.